So when we talk about waiting on God, one of the things I want you to understand is we're trying to get ourselves into a place of focusing our hearts on God. Shut off the distractions, whether it's the phone, TV, billboards, desires, and all these things kind of crowd our hearts. So we're not able to fully engage with God. For many people, the most part of our prayer life is actually trying to get to a place of shutting off the distractions. So when I started to spend time waiting on God, and all these distracting thoughts started to come to my mind, one of the ways I learned to deal with those distracting thoughts was to write them down. That was my way of just getting it out of my mind and knowing that I'm going to deal with that later. You know, Jesus says, when we gather in his name, he's there. He says, where 2 or 3 gather in my name, I am there. You can apply that to yourself. When you choose to spend time with God in your prayer closet, at home, in your room, and your whole being is one, your body, your soul, your spirit, you're one, I believe in that place you can encounter God. Another thing that's very important when you choose to spend time waiting on God is finding a quiet space. You know, I already made reference to the distractions of the mobile phones. You need to learn how to turn your phone off because, you know, Jesus talks about, you know, when you go into your room and you want to pray, shut the door and pray to your Father who sees you in secret. I believe one of the ways you shut the door is turning off your phone because that phone is one of the biggest distractions we have. So you need to learn how to shut off the phone. Find a quiet place. Find a place where you know you can easily just be still and engage. It's harder to focus when people are walking around and people are talking and people are, you know, there's so much distractions. It's just easier to do this when you find a place of quietness. Another thing that I found that helps me to focus on God is finding a posture that I'm able to stay in for an extended period of time. You know, I know this is practical, but it's actually sometimes I sit down, sometimes I lie on my face, sometimes I'm kneeling. And I find that my body is not able to hold the pressure for so long. So I find a posture that I'm able to sit in and just wait and be still. What does it mean to wait on God? Well, it means to wait. You're waiting with an expectation. You're waiting with your mind, your emotions, your heart fixed on God. What's going on in my mind? The best way to describe it is this. If you've ever been in a time of worship or prayer, when you really sense the presence of God, there's such a nearness. There's such a sense of oneness. And there's such a sense of connectedness. And there's a real heart connection with God. You just feel like nothing else matters and you're in that place of oneness. Translate that into a place of you just being still and waiting. You can get to a place where you're waiting on God and the presence of God comes so strong and literally you're not supposed to do anything. You're just supposed to just stay there. You're taking time to set your affections on God in that place when your body is still and your soulish realm, the noise level is low and you're able to just receive from God. In those places, you can actually encounter the presence of God in really deep ways that can end up in visionary encounters. Now, I know people that go into some deep places in God, and many times, if not all the times, it's come from this whole idea of spending time to be still before the presence of God. I found that to actually effectively wait on God, I have to get to a place where I'm able to cast my cares upon God and going into time of actually declaring and confessing, Lord, this is on my mind right now. Right now, I'm concerned about all these things. I trust you and I'm growing in faith. I know you're going to do this. Those things actually shift my heart emotionally. And I get to a place where I can effectively wait on God. Because I've tried this the other way around, where I'm trying to spend time waiting on God while my mind is worried about so many things. And it's almost impossible to focus because I have not come to a place of casting my cares upon God. One of the challenges you're going to face, apart from distractions and thoughts when you choose to be waiting on God, is falling asleep. Now, I have fallen asleep many times waiting on God. In fact, one of the times when I chose to spend a good amount of hours waiting on God, I think I was coming out of a very busy time and I was physically tired. So when I chose, to just wait on God and just be still, I just naturally fell asleep. And what I actually did was I got the sleep out of me. I think I might have slept for like an hour or two or whatever. And the moment I was like, I knew I'd got rid of that tiredness, I then decided to spend more time waiting on God. So I was actually more alert in myself. It's very difficult to spend quality time waiting on God when you're physically tired. So I think it's important you find a time and a space where you know your body is going to actually engage with this activity. Waiting on God is not about trying to get something from God. Waiting on God is not about trying to get God to even release a breakthrough in your life. Waiting on God is you doing exactly what Psalms 46:10 says. Be still and know. You're waiting because you want to know God. You're waiting because you want to go deeper in intimacy. This is why many people don't want to wait, because most people are coming to God just because they want him to do something, just because they want to break through here or there. They're not coming to God to actually know him. They're not coming to God for God's sake. They're coming to God for their sake, for God to do this and do this and do this. So many times waiting on God is not the most attractive thing for many Christians to do in their spiritual life, because it's not really focused on them. It's more focused on God, and it's very hard on the flesh. Waiting on God is one of the ways we step into a deep place of intimacy with God. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this is not easy. When I started practicing this, I thought, this is pointless, Lord. I mean, it just feels like nothing is happening. It wasn't like I was hearing God speaking to me. It wasn't like I was sensing anything, but I noticed the impact on my life more after I came out of the place of stillness and waiting on God than many times during the times of waiting on God. If you've watched some of our videos, we've talked about different ways of engaging the presence of God in prayer, different ways to improve your prayer life. I'm not saying waiting on God is the only dimension. I want you to add this to the other things you do when you pray. I want to challenge you to spend time in silence in the presence of God.